Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean D'Souza, and this is the 5th rerun out of 6. And then we get back to our normal programming, which means that as you're listening to this, I will be back in Auckland and just resting. And the reason why we do this is we make sure that we've got enough of reruns for the time that we're away, and then at least for a couple of weeks when we get back. Because who wants to go right back to work when you get back? And that's why we do this with our newsletters, which is for 5000 BC, the membership site for Psychotactics, and for the podcast. So that's 3 sets that need to be earmarked in advance so that when we get back, we don't have to rush back to work the very next day. Now, this podcast is about planning. And now we're in the middle of July, and it's as good a time as any to replan, to refocus in a way. And we've done a lot of our planning in months like November or October or July. And we realize that we've got to refocus and change the way things are going. The best advice I ever got about planning was from Doug Hitchcock, and that's what I'm sharing with you because I use it to this day. I started out way back in 2000. It's 2016 now. We run a very profitable business. Doug Hitchcock's method has helped us right through the years. So that's a little gift to you. This is the 3-Month Vacation. I'm Sean D'Souza. Doug Hitchcock was my first real mentor. And he had been bankrupt thrice. When I first moved to Auckland in the year 2000, I didn't really know anyone. I was starting up a new business, I was starting up a new life, and I joined a networking group. And within that networking group, I asked for a mentor. Well, no one in the networking group was willing to be a mentor. But someone did put me in touch with Doug. The only problem with Doug was he had been bankrupt thrice. Now, when I say he was bankrupt thrice, it doesn't mean that he was still bankrupt. He just pulled himself out of the hole 3 times in his life. And there he was at about 70 plus. And he was my first mentor. And before he starts to talk to me about anything, he asks me, "Do you do goal setting?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have goals." And he goes, "No, do you have goals on paper?" And I said, "No." He says, "We have to start there. We have to start with goals on paper." And that's how I started doing goal setting all the way back in the year 2000. And almost immediately, I got all the goal setting wrong. And you ask, how can you get goal setting wrong? After all, you're just putting goals down on a sheet of paper. How can you get something like that wrong? You can't write the wrong goals, but you can write too many goals. That's exactly what I did. So I sat down with that sheet of paper and I wrote down all my work goals, my personal goals, and I had an enormous list. And that's when Doug came back into the scene and he said, "Pick 3. And I said, "I could pick 5. He goes, no, pick 3. So I picked 3 goals in my work and 3 goals for my personal life. And you know what? By the end of the year, I'd achieved those goals. And ever since, I have been sitting down and working out these goals based on Doug's method. Doug may have lost his business thrice in a row, but he knew what he was talking about. Most of us just wander through life expecting things to happen. And when they happen, we say they happen for a reason. But they don't happen for a reason. They happen and we assign a reason to it. In this episode, I'm going to cover 3 topics. The first is the 3-part planning. Then we'll go the other way. We'll create a stop doing list. And finally, we look at benchmarks and see how we've done in the year. So let's start off with the first one, which is the 3-part planning. Does the San Fernando earthquake ring any bells in your memory? Most people haven't ever heard of this earthquake, and yet it was one of the deadliest earthquakes in US history. It collapsed entire hospitals, it killed 64 people, it injured over 2,500. When the damage was assessed, it had cost millions of dollars, and yet it could have been the disaster that eclipsed all other US disasters. That's because the earthquake almost caused the entire Van Norman Reservoir to collapse. The dam held. And yet, if it had collapsed, the resulting rush of water would have taken the lives of more people than the Pearl Harbor attack, the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, 9/11, and 1900 Galveston hurricane combined. In barely 12 seconds, the top section of the dam had disintegrated, and yet the surrounding areas were extremely lucky. The reservoir was only half full that day. The aftershocks of the earthquake continued to cause parts of the dam to break apart. A few feet of freeboard was the only thing that stopped a total collapse. And this total collapse is what many of us come close to experiencing as we try to clamber up the ladder of success. We try to do too many things and we don't seem to go anywhere. In effect, this is like water cascading down a dam. There's too many things and we have no control over it. So what's going to stop it? The only thing that seems to stop anything is some kind of focus, and goal setting is focus. And the way we go about our goal setting is the way Doug showed me. The first category of goal setting is what we want to achieve at work. The second set comprises of our personal goals. And the third, this is the most critical of all, what we're going to learn. So should we start off with the first one, which is our work goals? Well, that's not the way we do it at Psychotactics. The way we work at Psychotactics is we look at our personal goals. Our own lives are far more important than work. And so what we do is we sit down and first we plan vacations. As you know, we take 3 months off, and we've been doing this since 2004. We started our business at the end of 2002, and yet by 2004, we had decided we were going to take 3 months off. The thing is that your vacations also need planning. And so our vacations are broken up into big breaks, small breaks, and weekends. Now the big breaks are the month-long vacations, and then the small breaks are in between that. So we'll go away for a couple of days somewhere, and that's our small break. And I'm saying weekends because before I wouldn't take weekends off. I'd be working on the weekend at least for a few hours on Saturday morning and a few hours on Sunday morning, and I don't do that anymore. And now that's almost written in stone. It's very hard for me to get to work on weekends. I'll slide sometimes, but it's very hard. So the most critical thing to do is to work out the long breaks. When are we going to have those? And then the shorter breaks. Now, that comprises that whole vacation concept, but you also have to have other personal goals. Maybe I want to learn how to cook Mexican dishes. Or maybe I want to learn how to take better photographs. Now, these are personal projects. They're not pseudo work projects. They're things that at the end of the year I go, wow, that's what I've achieved. That's how much I've progressed. And that's how you start off with your personal goals. You plan your breaks. You plan what you want to do personally. Once you're done with that, then you go to your work goal. Now, we have a lot of work goals. We've got a whole bunch of things because we've got products, we've got courses, we've got workshops. And all of this has to sit nicely in between so that we work for 12 weeks and then we go on a break. And we've decided that we're not having any workshops next year. We've had a lot of workshops this year, no workshops next year. So now this leaves us the chance to focus on the courses and the products. Now, my brain is like that dam. There's always water rushing over. I always want to do a million projects, but then I have to choose. And the article writing course is one of the things that I want to do for sure. I want to do a version 2.0 of it. The cartoon bank, I've been putting that off for a long time. That's definitely something I want to do. And then I'll pick a third one. Now, do I stop at 3? No, but I make sure that I get these 3 down. The 3 that I'm going to do, they go down on paper. Some other projects will come up. A lot of stuff that I might not expect, and yet I'll get all of this done. But these 3, they'll get done. Those 3 vacations, they will get done. And then we get to the third part, which is learning. So what am I going to learn this year? Maybe I'll learn a software, or maybe I'll learn how to use audio better. The point is, I have to write it down, because once I write it down, then I'm going to figure out where I have to go and what I have to do to make sure that learning happens. This is not just learning like reading some books or doing something minor like that. This is big chunks of learning, so that by the end of the year, I know I've reached that point. So when it comes to planning, the first thing that we're always doing is we are looking at these 3 elements, which is work, vacation, and learning. And if we have to do other sub-projects, we'll do it. But these 9 things get done year after year after year. And this is what Doug taught me. He gave me this ability to focus, because I consider myself to be unfocused. I consider myself to want to do everything and anything. That was the gift of Doug. In the year 2008, we had a program. It was a year-long program. You probably heard of it. It was called the Psychotactics Protege Program. And we would teach clients how to write articles, how to create info products, public relations, lots of things along the way in that year. And as you'd expect, it was reasonably profitable. 15 students paid $10,000, and so that was $150,000 that we would have in the bank before the year started. In 2009, we pulled the plug on the Protege system. So why would we do that? We started it in 2006. It was full in 2007. It was full in 2008. It was full in 2009. There was a waiting list. And we decided not to go ahead with it. We decided it was going to go on our stop doing list. We were going to walk away from $150,000 just like that. And yes, some clients were unhappy because they wanted to be on the next Protege program. They'd seen the testimonials, they'd seen the results. They knew that it was good enough to sign up for. They knew that $10,000 was a very small investment for a year-long's advancement. And on our part, we realized that we had to walk away from $150,000 that we were getting on cue every December. This is what's called a stop doing list. And we've used this stop doing list in our own lives. When we left India and got to Auckland, it wasn't like we were leaving something desperate. We were leaving something that was really good. I was drawing cartoons all day, going bowling in the afternoon, having long lunches. Renuka's company was doing really well. They were picking up all our expenses, and the only thing we really had to pay for was food. But at that point in time, we decided we had to make a break. We had to stop doing something so that we could do something different. We don't know whether that different is better, but at that point we have to stop it so that we can explore what is coming up ahead. There are two things that you put on your stop doing list. One, something that is working exceedingly well, and the second thing, something that's doing really badly or something that's getting in your way. Now, the first one doesn't make any sense. If something is doing exceedingly well, why would you stop it? Well, the point is that if you continue to do something, then you can't do something else. You don't know how good that something is until you stop doing it, and then you go on to do something else. So last night I was reading The New Yorker, and The New Yorker is one of my favorite magazines. And there's James Surowiecki saying exactly the same thing. He's saying that Time Warner should sell HBO. So HBO has now 120 million subscribers globally. It has earned over $2 billion in profits last year. Its standalone streaming service has got over 1 million new subscribers since last spring. And what does the article recommend? It recommends that they get rid of it. They sell it. They get the best price for it at this point in time when they're doing so well. But what if it doubles in its value? That's the answer we'll never know. But the article went on. It talked about ESPN and how in 2014 it was worth $50 billion. And Disney owned it. They should have sold it. They could have banked the money and they could have focused on something else. But no, they kept it. And ESPN is still doing well. It's still the dominant player. But you can see that it's not exactly where it was in 2014. The Protégé program was doing really well for us. Clients were with us for the whole year. They would then join 5000 BC. We'd get to meet them. It was a lot of fun, and it generated a sizable revenue. And we walked away from it. And it enabled us to do other stuff that we would not have been able to do. So when you say stop doing lists, it's not just the bad stuff that you have to stop doing. Sometimes you have to stop doing the things that are very critical. Like next year, we're not doing workshops. Workshops are very critical to our business, but we're not going to do the workshops. Instead, we'll do online courses. Instead, we'll do something else. We'll create that space for ourselves, even though the workshops are doing really well. The other side of the stop doing list is stuff that's driving you crazy. You know it's driving you crazy, but you're not stopping it. So for instance, in September of this year, we started rebuilding the Psychotactics site. Now there are dozens of pages on the Psychotactics site, and I want to fiddle around with every single one of them and do things that are interesting, different. But the problem is that there are other projects, like for instance the storytelling workshop. And of course, vacations that get in the way. The point is that at some point you have to say, okay, I really want to do this, but I'm not going to do this. I'm going to put it off until later. And this is procrastination, but it is part of a stop doing list. You can't do everything at the same time. Last year, this time, we had the same dilemma when we were going to do the podcast. So I wanted to write some books for Amazon, and I wanted to do the podcast. And every day we would go for a walk and it would drive me crazy. I didn't know where to start, when to start, what to do first. And I had to sit down and go, okay, what am I going to stop? And I just dumped the Amazon books and started on the podcast. And now we're on podcast number 70, and it's not even been 52 weeks. So it shows you how that stop doing list can help you focus and get stuff out of the way. And sometimes you have to procrastinate to get to that point. Now, the stop doing list is not restricted to work alone. You can take it into your personal life as well. For instance, I used to get my hair cut by a hairdresser, Anne. And I was dissatisfied for a very long time. So you come back and you grumble, and my wife, Renuka, she said, okay, stop grumbling. Go and find another hairdresser. And so I went and found another hairdresser, and I ran into Shay. Now, Shay was cutting my hair so well. It was amazing. And I wasn't the only one who thought that was amazing. Usually, I was on a waiting list at the barber's shop. I would get there, and there were two people in front of me waiting for Shay, while a few of the barbers just stood around doing absolutely nothing because no one was interested. And then one day, involuntarily, Shay went onto my stop doing list. So Kimmy was around and Shay wasn't, and so Kimmy cut my hair. And she was better than Shay. And I thought, oh my goodness, I should have done this a long time ago. And then Kimmy got transferred to another branch, and now there's Francis, and you've heard about Francis in another podcast. And now Francis is my top guy. So there you go. Even in something as mundane as cutting hair, there is a stop doing this. And you have to push yourself a bit. And at other times, you have to pull back and go, no, we're not going to do that. So the stop doing list is for good times as well as for pressurized times. And you have to decide, I'm going to stop doing it. I'm going to move on to the next thing. And this takes us to the third part of planning, which is benchmarks. Now, what are benchmarks? Often when we set out to do a project, say we're going to do that website, what we don't do is we don't write down all the elements that are involved in doing that website. Because a website can go on forever, can't it? I mean, it expands exponentially. When you're saying, I'm going to write books for Amazon, well, how many books are you going to write? How many pages are the books going to be? What's the time frame? Where are you going to get the cartoons from? Who's going to do all the layout? Having this kind of benchmark in mind makes a big difference. And so when we plan for something, so for instance, if I'm planning for the article writing course, which is version 2.0, I'm going to have to sit down and work out what I'm going to have to do. When I'm doing the stock cartoons, I'm going to have to sit down and work out what kind of stock cartoons, how many. It's perfectly fine to write a top level goal. You should do that. You should say, okay, I'm going to do the website. But then you have to get granular, because the granular bit tells you, have I reached my destination? Otherwise, people don't get to their goals, and that's why they're struggling, because there is no clarity. Usually, you're going to get that clarity when you have only 3 things to do. But even so, if you don't have benchmarks, you'll never know when you're reaching your goal or if you're going to reach your goal. And that brings us to the end of this episode. So what did we cover? We looked at 3 sets of goal setting, and that is your personal goal setting, your work goal setting, and your learning goal setting. And instead of having 700 of them, you just have 3 things that you want to achieve in the year. 3 major things that you want to achieve in the year. Logically, you'd start with the work, but don't handle the work. Just go to the breaks. Organize your breaks first because you get reinvigorated and you come back and you can do better work. So first fix the breaks, then go to the work, then go to the learning. And that takes care of the first set. The second thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a stop doing list. Sometimes things are working, they're going your way, and they still have to be dropped. That's what we did with the Protégé program. That's what we did with our move to New Zealand. And a lot of good things have become better because we've decided to move along. And sometimes you're just confused because you have too many things to do and procrastinate. Go ahead. I mean, I know this is about planning, not procrastination, but procrastination is a form of planning when you have too much to do. And finally, have the benchmarks. Make your goals a little more detailed so that you know when you're hitting those benchmarks. Plan it in a little more detail. And that's how you reach your goal. This is what goal setting is all about. It's very simple. People make it more complicated than it needs to be. So what's the one thing that you can do today? Very simple. Work, vacation, and learning. Get your paper out, get your pen, and start writing. 3 goals. You can start off with 7 or 10, but whittle it down to 3. Oh, and make sure you write it down. When you write it down, things happen. It's like magic when you write it down. Keep it in your head. It's not as powerful. Write it down, it happens. If one of your goals is to join 5000 BC this year, that's 5000 BC, our membership site, you'll find that it's quite a nice place to be. It's a very warm and friendly place, so it would be great to see you there. It also gives you the opportunity to be first in line for any of the online courses that we're having. And that might not seem like a big deal until you see how cool the online courses are at Psychotactics. It's not just another information dump. You actually get the skill. So if you set out to be a cartoonist, you become a cartoonist. If you set out to be a writer, you become a writer. It's not just information that you're getting. It's all very practical. And being a member of 5000 BC gives you that little edge to get in there before everybody else. You have to read the Brain Audit, however, and you can get that at psychotactics.com/brainaudit or on amazon.com. And if you've read the Brain Audit and you would like a special collector's edition, then email us at sean@psychotactics.com and we'll give you instructions on how to get the special collector's edition. That's it from me at Psychotactics and the 3-month vacation. Bye for now. Still listening? In the year 2001, I sat down and wrote my goals. Of course, I wrote in 2000 as well after meeting Doug. But in 2001, I decided to test this theory of writing it down. And I wrote down, I want to go on a cruise. I want to go to the South Island. And I had no clue how that was going to happen. And just out of the blue, I went on that cruise and I went to the South Island. I did pitch for the speaking assignment, but I thought it would be local. And imagine my surprise when it was on a cruise between New Zealand and Australia. And then later in that year, one of the clients called up. They had been to our website and they said, "Can you come to the South Island?"